I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 189th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss government mandates, who's entitled to issue them and who is not, and what kind of impact do they actually have on our population. Today's panel begins with Joe Gaines, former member of the faculty of the University of Akron and Wadsworth High School. Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, and Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Joe, in recent times, the United States president, governors, local school boards, and various local leaders are ordering everyday citizens to do one thing or another in the name of public health, social justice, and various other causes. Are these public figures acting within the scope of their authority, or is it just politics as usual?
It's a good question.
I
The
try.
reason I say it's a good question because I think it's happening more often now than ever before. But there's a word missing that I think is very important, and that's the word vote. You know, we vote these candidates in. We vote to have things done. We are the people of this country, and we believe, because it's a republic, that we have control. We believe that. But do we really? And the thing is, like, you know, if we vote that we want something, we should either get it or we should get it. You know, we should get that, whatever we're voting for. If we vote against it, well, then we vote against it and we down it. The Republican form of government is separated in three different branches, each having a power that cannot be performed by the other. Only a representative legislature can write laws. Right. And even though that legislation can only be the one that writes the laws, it's up to the government to enact those laws. I don't know. I like to hear others talk about this too. I have, my feelings are this. I don't think that the federal government is as strong as we think it is. We want to put more strength on it to blame it for problems than we need to. I after researching a little bit, I've come to a strange conclusion. That is, I'm a federalist. I realize that. Not that I'm against state rights, but I think the federal government has the right to get certain things done, especially like with the pandemic and so on.
Patty, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, mandates are interesting. I think that in many cases, if the mandate doesn't affect us personally, we're okay with it. But as soon as it affects our personal life and inconveniences us, then all of a sudden we're against it. My personal feelings on this, however, and I think the purpose of mandates in their best form is for the public safety. And, you know, we have organizations like, you know, the FDA, we have OSHA, which, you know, continually issue mandates that are for the protection of people. Now, were these mandates that they've made always popular? No, maybe not as vocal, but, you know, for example, when I saw an old clip of when seatbelts were first required, and people were furious about it. I'm not going to drive my car with a seatbelt on. No, they're violating my personal liberties and my choice to drive with it, seatbelt on or not. No one says that anymore. You know, unfortunately, I think when it comes to public safety, that mandates are needed. No, you know, for example, we have, you know, different companies that are mandated to, when producing food, there are certain standards that they have to live up with. You can't open up Joe's meat shop in the back of your house and butcher cows and just show and sell them to the public, because there is a safety issue where that is concerned. You know, I feel with, you know, all of this, however, has been brought, you know, to a head, obviously, with the vaccine and mask mandates that are currently being used. Now, the other purpose is to protect the community and to protect the citizens from getting COVID. Also to try to at least stem the expanse of the COVID pandemic that we are currently, living in. Unfortunately, there's many people, and I know we had some visitors to our city council meeting last Tuesday that were very concerned about the school's mandates on masks. They were, unfortunately, they were speaking to the wrong group because that is under the purview of the school board. And the school board meeting was quite contentious last Monday where this is concerned. Now, these people are very, very passionate about this. They do not believe in many cases, the vaccine. They don't believe in the efficacy of masking. Personally, I feel that some of the information that they are seeing and some of the experts that they are listening to are perhaps not the best or don't have some of the correct information that is needed. However, I think that it can be within the scope of that local school board to declare a mask mandate. There was a lot of concern when President Biden had suggested that companies with more than 100 employees should put in a vaccine requirement. Now, the federal government did not do that. They did mandate vaccinations for federal employees, which is within their purview. But what they were doing was suggesting very strongly that companies with over 100 employees do so. And many companies have done that. I presently volunteer at Wadsworth Hospital, which is part of the SUMA Corporation. We received a letter a few weeks ago saying that we no longer could volunteer or anyone could work in the hospital. And I believe it's by the end of October unless you are vaccinated. That to me is within the scope of that local business to make that decision. I find it interesting that there are Republicans that are opposed to that because they have always pushed, and part of the platform is for the sovereignty of those corporations and businesses to run their operation in a certain way. But unfortunately, when they make a mandate that they don't like, then it becomes the opposite. And you have situations where, like Governor Ron DeSantis, who went so far as to say, you can't mandate to use the masks or the vaccinations. And I'm going to go one step farther and mandate that you cannot use that. Now, some of those rulings that I think the one against cruise ships that he placed, I believe that was overturned. I might be wrong on that. Now, granted, there is, I think there is definite concern about masks for some people to wear them. And science does change. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, Anthony Fauci said you didn't need to wear a mask. Found out afterwards, because they learned more about COVID, that it was effective to wear one. You had people like Kamala Harris, who said she wasn't going to take a vaccination if approved by Trump. I think what she was saying was that she wasn't going to base her taking a vaccine just on Trump's word. She wanted to hear it from the FDA. She wanted to hear it from the CDC and so forth, and from reliable sources, not just some politician saying to do this. We have to look at all of these things, but unfortunately, because in our present state, we have such divided views on politics that people are using, for example, the mask mandate and a vaccination mandate as a signal to being a Trump follower and a non-Trump follower. And very honestly, that should have nothing to do with it. Whether I voted for Trump or Biden shouldn't affect my concern for the safety of the people in this country because of a vaccine or because of a mask.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Bryan?
Well, unfortunately, we're in a spot where it seems as though the only way anybody can get anything done is by mandating it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the mandates are unfunded. So for instance, when the American with Disabilities Act was passed, every time you walk on a sidewalk in Wadsworth, there's a curb cut, and one of those plates that is, how would you call that? Is it a, Patty, it's a stipple of some sort? It's raised,
it's almost like a rumble.
like a rumble
plate.
strip.
Yeah.
And that basically is for anyone that's blind, that would know that there's a crosswalk there. I think personally that's a good thing. Now the city had to bear that cost.
Yes.
And it wasn't cheap. Okay. They had to, it wasn't one of those mandates where when the sidewalk needs to be replaced, you can do it. It's, you have to do this now. Okay. So let's say you put a brand new sidewalk in 6 months ago, and the mandate gets passed down that you have to do this now. Now you have to go back, bust out all that concrete and put another strip in because that's the mandate. I think we can use mandates judiciously. And the problems that come up we're seeing now is that people have been almost, just pushed to the point of no return with all these different mandates. I can't speak, about certain things in the city, but I do know that the city has been very judicious in following the mandates that the governor has put down. Okay. And there are people on, like Patty said, there are people on either side that they are just hopping mad that there's no mask mandates, that the kids aren't required to get vaccinated and all that kind of stuff. It's a delicate middle of the road type of position that you have to take. On the other end, like Patty's talking about, you have people showing up at school board meetings and at city council meetings complaining that city government is, going too far. So I think on a local level, the city of Wadsworth has done a pretty good job of staying in the middle of this. Okay. Now, as a business, what's that? If a business decides that they require people to wear masks, I think they should be able to have that. Yeah. Okay. If Disneyland or Disney World down in Florida decides that people should wear masks, I think they can do that. And I don't know exactly what the DeSantis, regulations were and all that kind of stuff. I believe they were just saying that you couldn't mandate, you couldn't force people to get vaccinated. Now, I got vaccinated, okay? And everybody that I know got vaccinated. I get the shingle shot. Nobody mandated that I get the shingle shot, right. But I could get measles from somebody. And I don't want to get measles at 62 years old because it's nasty from what I understand. I get a flu shot every year. It's not mandated. It's just good. I'm trying to take care of myself. So I think we can back away from the whole mandate thing sometimes and just, settle down and say, let's do what's best. What problem that I see is that this whole thing started, and I'm not going to lay it in either camp, but I don't believe that the Trump FDA was sinister so that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and some of the talking heads out there over the Democratic Party came out and said, I'm not taking a Trump FDA vaccine. To me, that was wrong. I don't care. You call it a Biden vaccine. It's a Pfizer as far as I'm concerned. I took it. Mm-hmm. So let's get the politics out of it. And let's just say for public health reasons, let's make sure that we do the right thing. So that's where I really come down on mandates. We got to be very judicious in the way we place these on people. I don't know if you've seen what's happening down in Australia and New Zealand. That is bonkers. That it can never happen here. I mean, it's just not right what they're doing down there. And I'll let you guys, watch some of those videos of what they're doing to their population.
Why don't you get into that in a couple of minutes after we've heard from Ron?
Well, on a personal level, I've never really been very happy with the idea of mandates because it's a one-size-fits-all solution, and there are so many folks that it's not really relevant for. On a personal level, I even changed my religious affiliation many years ago from something that gave me a little more responsibility for my own ethical and moral development rather than the choice of whether or not to follow some ecclesiastical dictate. And I realized in my early 20s that choice of a college career for me was much better than a military one, because I probably wasn't going to have the discipline to fall into that lifestyle. However, when morality and reason fail us, then it's necessary, I think, for some higher authority, be it government or wherever it is, to step in and do something. Now, I've recently read a copy of the Constitution for the 10th Amendment, and I think if, for example, the mandate for vaccination worldwide or countrywide is to be put in, it is indeed unconstitutional. However, the government has for many years done end runs around this. Patty mentioned OSHA and things like the EPA. And my father, for example, in his early 20s, took a job with the Pennsylvania Railroad, working in the shops in the Altoona, Pennsylvania, and building locomotives and railroad cars. And by his mid-30s, he had virtually no hearing left. However, OSHA now has stepped in and says a company must identify areas of high noise and put up warning signage and make available to employees ear protection. The EPA has stepped in and done things like, water quality and air quality, and asbestos is a good example. I worked in an industry that used copious amounts of asbestos. Earlier on, it was just sort of thrown around. My house, built in 1952, has asbestos around some of the heat pipes. So older houses have a problem with that, both lead in paint and asbestos in insulation. And industry is not likely to do anything about that on their own because it's expensive. And of course, they're going to pass it on to the consumer, but still it's expensive to do. And I think in that case, it's necessary, even if you don't call it a mandate, to make it a regulation by some kind of end run forming. Now, I understand that some of what in the Biden initiative on vaccinations is going to be is give OSHA the responsibility of enforcing and inspecting that. OSHA is pretty strapped for that. It's a fairly small agency, but bureaucracies will grow. We know that. So I think there's a reason for having some kind of regulation, some kind of mandate. We non-smokers don't have to go to a restaurant now and inhale secondhand smoke. And companies probably would not have put that in. Now, Bryan, that's counter to your idea that a business should have the opportunity to set their own rules. And in that case, restaurant business can't say, oh, okay, you can smoke, because there's a mandate now against that. And so I think it's good and bad. And I think it's necessary, as I say, when morality and reason fail us, it's time for the government to step in.
Well, isn't there a big difference, though, between government bureaus or organizations that have been created by Congress and given the authority to create regulations and so forth? Isn't there a difference between that and just creating a mandate out of whole cloth because it's?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And I agree that the Constitution is pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to use the end runs. We have to use the regulatory authority that has been set up or can be set up to do this. I agree with that.
That I didn't realize that it was being considered to use OSHA to enforce vaccinations.
I read that.
I think that's a great idea, to tell you the truth. I have become very impatient and even angered with people who refuse to take vaccines. They're putting all of us in danger. Although I've had my vaccine and I'm ready, willing, and able to take a booster if and when it's available. But still in all, when you look at the public health, the responsibilities because of all the people being hospitalized, with COVID-19 because they haven't been vaccinated. That makes me angry.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point now in certain states, they have, I think the most recent was Alaska. Idaho was in the same position where they have placed their hospitals under what they call, I believe it's called crisis management, whereby you do not treat the sickest. Normally when you would come into the emergency room, you take the sickest and treat them first, get them to the room. What they have gone to now is to treating first those that are most likely to survive, and those that are not, that would require more care, more staff, more time, are simply given some type of palliative care and basically allowed to die.
Isn't that normal triage?
Well, this crisis, doing it that way is the opposite of normal triage. They are not able to do normal triage where you treat treat the sickest first. They're doing just the opposite. We have already 680 some thousand, I think I gave the wrong number last time, 680,000 people that have died from COVID. And it's not getting better. Numbers have gone up. They're close to 2,000 people dying a day now. And we have to put a stop to this somehow.
Yeah. Bryan, I interrupted you a while ago, and quite frankly, I forgot the topic that you brought up.
Australia.
Yeah, the some of the video coming out of Australia, as far as I'm concerned, is very disturbing. And I put this in the camp of there's always some sort of mandate drift. When you talk about the EPA, they do a great job, but they put in place some regulations that nobody voted on, nobody told them to. They just decided that they were going to put in more regulations. So the farmer that has a pond that's an acre now comes under the EPA, and the EPA inspector goes out there and shuts the guy down. We have to protect against that kind of stuff. Some of the things that are happening down in that.
Said why, if the farmer is causing a fertilizer runoff from that pond and polluting the as I say, it's a one shot. I kind of agree here. It's not
even a farmer. The guy has 2 horses and a duck, and all of a sudden now he's under this mandate, and he's got to put all this stuff in place. What's happening down in Australia is disturbing in that they're just scooping people up off the street. If you can't provide your vaccine passport, so to speak, they take you right to jail. And I don't think we want to get to that.
They have a very restrictive COVID policy. Yeah. Of course, New Zealand does as well, and they have low numbers. My ex has a family member that's been living over there for the last 2 years. He got over there just in time for COVID. And I know he can only go so many miles away from his house. Right. And that's been for over a year. Yeah. So it's like going, it's like you can't go to the next county. Right. It's that restrictive.
And they had like 1 or 2 deaths. I guess I fall into Joe's camp in that I come down more of a libertarian on this, is that, people start talking about people can't go from state to state. Well, we need to have a vaccine passport. And if you don't have your passport, you don't go to you can't leave your state. I don't think that's going to go over well. That's not what we're looking for. We want public health to be public health. I've always said that if you let the public health department run your county or run your city, you'll never have a swimming pool. Too many people die swimming. You'll never have a skate park. You won't have a skate park if you let the public health people run, and they're good people. I don't want to throw them under the bus.
And I think we need to listen to them, though, as far as their recommendations.
Exactly.
And
moderation.
Get away from the idea that they're out to destroy us. They're not. They are out.
No.
Sure, have your skate park, but make sure the kids wear their helmets and their knee pads.
But what I'm saying is, it always goes to. It doesn't ever stay in the moderate to acceptable range. It always has to go to the extreme before people. They were filling in skate parks with sand out there. I mean, come on, they're outside. People are outside. I mean, I think I'm all for mandates with being them. They have to be used judiciously, prudently, and elected officials set the parameters of the mandate,
Right.
you know, so.
You know, when you create an agency though, and you fill it full of young people looking to make a name for themselves, if they don't create a regulation or two every year, they're not doing their job.
Right.
I think one of the things that I really liked about Trump was his mandate that the regulatory agency, if they, for every regulation that they passed, they had to eliminate 2 that were already on the books.
Right.
So and I kind of like that idea. Pardon me?
I didn't agree with that, just to eliminate it. Say if you add 1 new one, you've got to get rid of 2 old ones. You're not basing the existence of that regulation on its merits. You're simply saying by numbers.
Well, trust the regulators only to eliminate the bad regulations, Patty.
Right.
Don't you trust them?
Yeah, well, a lot of the regulations.
You trust them to create regulations.
Questionable, so that's a whole other topic. So
it's a philosophical concept. Everybody wants a little power and want to keep increasing that power.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly true for politicians. So.
Yes.
Good point.
Right, Patty?
Yeah, that's like me. Yeah.
Well, I think we're just about, no, we've got about 20 seconds left. Somebody's got one parting comment they'd like to make?
1 second.
No. Joe, you've been quiet for a while. Now you've got 10 seconds.
Mandates. I think that the helmet should be a mandate. People riding motorcycles, they should be mandated to wear a helmet.
And if they're not, we'll take their highway funds away.
No, just take the bike.
Charge them higher insurance rates.
Okay. Very good, folks. Thank you very much. Good program.
We'll see you.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.